Hola, animigos, and welcome to Keyframers, the animated collaborative coding livestream where we bring imaginative user interfaces to life. I'm your host, Stephen Shaw, but you may know me as @Shashaw.
And I'm your host, David Khourshid, also known as @DavidKPiano.
Together, we are coding compadres, animation amigos, Boolean buddies, and keyframe companions.
Yeah, so today we're going to be creating an animation from scratch live using HTML, CSS, and a little bit of JavaScript. And we're going to be actually looking at a tweet by Stephen Ruiz to do this. So we're not doing our typical dribble animation, but you'll see we're going to have some fun discussion today about how to do this seemingly impossible, maybe not so possible problem. I don't know, however you want to describe it. As always, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have, so please reach out in the chat or the comments.
That's right. Yeah, we got lots to do on this one. I'm already showing the animation and kind of what we'll be working towards here. So this is something you might commonly see in mock-ups or dribble animations or whatever, where you're kind of switching between two states and there's a smooth transition. Imagine that. And this is something that apps traditionally do very well, but web animation, it's deemed too difficult or whatever, and so it just ends up either not being done, a quick toggle, or some other kind of animation.
Right.
So
sorry,
go ahead.
With this animation, there's one tricky part. It seems simple, but the challenge that Steve posted is actually pretty challenging, because what needs to happen, according to this animation, is we need a fade out, then a fade in. So there has to be some moment of time where we have both of those. Well, actually, I guess both of them. No, they do. So they need to both be present at the same time. So you're sort of in this limbo state where you have two sizes and you have to neatly coordinate one fading out and then the other one fading in without hard coding any of the sizes. That's a strict requirement.
Right. So going through kind of the list of rules: modal with two or more states, each with different content. In each state, the content determines the modal size, so it needs to work without hard coding those sizes. When changing between the states, the current content fades out, size changes to the size of the new component, new content fades in. Yeah. And I think that's it as far as the requirements. He goes through a few potential solutions that he's found. And Twitter thread links to another episode that we did about flip transitioning with some CSS variables, where we just kind of move between two states that is essentially doing the same thing. But we're going to kind of even simplify further and show a more direct example. But if you want to check out that episode, I'd recommend checking it out, because we dive into a lot of the flip stuff that we'll be using today.
Yeah, of course, it's not the exact same thing like what we did in that previous episode, but we're going to make this as close as possible to the desired effect. So.
Yeah. So I've got a little bit of setup done already. Not much to write home about, but there's two different things of content. They each have some filler in there that's different lengths. And the size of them is according to that content. So where do you want to start here, David?
So let's start actually getting the functionality in, which is if you click it, it goes from one state to the next state. This is how we typically start with all of our animations. We just have like a storyboard, if you will, where you would say, we need this state, we need this state, we need this to go to this and this to go to that, and just mapping it out without any animation.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be a good place to start.
All right. Well, so kind of the first step to that is creating the layers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So this is a trick we do quite often, called grid layering, as I've called it. Where we apply display grid to a parent, and then grid area 1, 1 to the direct children, and that gives us 2 layers on top of each other. If we say opacity 0.5 on those, then you'll be able to see that they are actually on top of each other, and that that just gives us a nice way to have 2 layers on top of each other, and making it so that the container itself, let's see, align items center. If we do that, then the content, the app container itself should be determined, like the size of it is determined by that content. So if we set let's say content 2 to display none, then it'll resize. Yeah, there we go. All right, so those 2 layers are now on top of each other, and now we can just focus on transitioning between the 2.
Yeah, cool. So all of this is inside the app. I'm guessing the app is what has the background in it.
Right now, the content themselves have that background applied to them.
So let's see if we can apply it to the app now. Now that we're treating the app as the actual container. Unless you think that's a bad idea.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Background on the app instead of each.
Yes. Yeah, that's totally fine. I was mainly doing that so we could see the 2 layers separately when we initially started. Got that going. Let's go ahead. And this is a fun little use of CSS variables here with these filler contents. I just have a little height variable to let us have a few little pieces there. Okay. 1.
All right, so just letting you know what I'm doing. I'm adding some very simple, we've done this a million times, some very simple JavaScript. Can't say, anyway, I don't know why I'm blanking, it's a Monday. Actually, we always do these on Mondays, so it's not really an excuse. But anyway, I'm doing something so that when you click the app, it's going to toggle between those 2 states. And I'm going to call them big and small. View equals big, a very not state machine, but whatever. This is the easiest way to just toggle between those. And then we could set set.state equals that view.
Yeah, and we can move this out to a function so that we can call it right at the start. Just moving that out here, and then yeah, we'll do. Yep, great.
Great.
Yeah. All right. So now we'll go when we initially start. We should be in the small state, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's start doing some state toggling stuff up here. So we'll say,
oh geez, add event listener. I don't know why I blanked on that. I was like, create event handler, add event handler, add event listener. Okay, so
data state equals big. We'll say, wait, so what? This is, let's say content small and content big.
Yeah.
Just for easier targeting, we'll say content big display block.
Then we could just copy all this over and have small.
We'll say content here, display none.
Yeah. So now this is just the way that we're doing it. Of course, in your actual application, when you're showing and hiding things, it might not be this way. You might literally just be showing or hiding it using React or Vue or whatever. It looks like the app is the entire size. So
yeah, I'm not sure what happened.
Oh, because we're hard coding a height onto it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There we go. Cool.
That's much better.
I wonder if we could, you know what? I'm going to add some more contents to big just so it really looks big.
Sure, probably could use a couple more lines.
There we go.
There we go.
Nice. That was so easy. All I had to do was copy and paste your fancy filler stuff.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah, it's a nice little tool for mocking up some text-like content.
Yeah. All right. So we have basic states in here. You click, it goes to one state, and you click, it toggles back to the other state. So just taking a look at the animation again. When you click, ideally we want it to fade out, shrink, or grow, whichever direction it's going, and then smoothly animate to the next size. So yeah, let's tackle that.
All right. Well, let's see.
Pull up a handy script. This is from our previous episodes too. The flip script.
Oh, you're adding that in. Real quick, yeah. A question in the chat. What's the question mark and the colon doing? This is just a ternary statement. So you can imagine this as if, else. But it's a shorter way to write it, so you can actually do it on one line here. And so if view is equal to big, we'll return the string small. Otherwise, else it'll return big.
Yeah,
that's a handy little shortcut.
And I posted a link in the chat.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, David's copying in our flip script here. This is just a really simplified version of the flip technique. We've dived into this a ton in a bunch of different episodes, but the basics of it is flip means first, last, invert, and play. So we read the first state. We get all the information about the sizing and positioning from that first state. Then we do something with this function here that changes the DOM, that changes the layout, and then we read that last state, and then we figure out the differences between the two states and invert that, and then play it. It sounds kind of weird at first, but we'll break it down as we go along in a way that should be a little simpler to follow.
Yeah, and we have plenty of videos on it.
Yes.
Too, in case you want some more flipping action.
Definitely go watch those. All right, cool. So we've got flip in there. So I assume, okay, you've already added it here.
So you have those variables.
Right. So in our click listener, we're flipping by toggling the state. That's our do something, and we're watching lapp as our element. So what we can do here is in app, we can say our before. We'll do content data or attribute style, right? And then we'll position absolute bottom percent left 0. That should give us a little preview into what's happening with that. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So our flip function is just giving us CSS variables. That's all we're really concerned about is those CSS variables that's showing us the difference in position here. Hey, stop changing things.
Okay,
so dx is the difference in the x position. dy is the difference in the y position. dw is the difference in width as like a decimal percentage, and dh is the difference in height as a decimal percentage. So you can see whenever we toggle from the small state to the large state, we're moving negative 100 pixels, and then the height is almost twice as high, as 1.8 times as high. So we
Right.
can now use these variables to help smoothly transition things.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons where we would want to use those variables instead of trying to do it directly in JavaScript, because when you do it directly in JavaScript, that's where the challenge becomes a lot harder, because now it's not just a like if you're using Framer Motion, which is an awesome library, by the way. If you're using Framer Motion to just straight up do the layout animation and stuff, then actually coordinating and doing, you know, delays and having this appear after that, that becomes a little bit trickier. But now that we have the values, it's like, thanks for the values. We're going to do what we want with them.
Yeah.
You'll see what we mean.
Yeah. So I'm tweaking our hiding code a little bit here, because since we're doing this fade out animation, we actually can't go from just display none to display block, because you can't animate like going to display none or display block.
Right.
So we'll use visibility here and then position relative, so that our active content is taking up space and it's visible, and then our hidden content is visibility hidden and position absolute, so that it's out of the way. You can't interact with it. It's not clickable or shouldn't show up for screen readers or anything like that. That's a super great way to handle toggling between content there. And we're still triggering the same kind of reflow that we were getting before. You can see the values are still all the same from our flip variables. So that's exactly what we want.
Yeah.
All right, so you've got fade out and fade in. So we can do that a little bit here. Let's see. I always like to simplify these a little bit, where it's just to opacity 0 and from opacity 0. That way you can play with the opacity on the element itself if you want, so it can fade from 0.5 to 0 or whatever. So let's say here we want animation fade in, animation name, and then here name fade out, duration 1 second, probably 0.5 seconds. Animation timing function, we'll just do linear right now. All right, and for this, so we're needing to coordinate between the two. So let's do an animation delay here of about 1 second. So we can fade the other content out, and then we'll wait another ½ second, and the other content will fade in.
I think we need both.
Yeah, we also need animation fill mode. Both.
You shorten my keyframes, but you spell out all of the properties.
I'm being explicit here.
So was I.
Well, but this is explicit in a way that it actually hampers us sometimes.
All right, that's fair.
So anyway, so let's see. All right, we got that. All right, we're not getting fade out triggering, which is interesting.
Is it because of the visibility hidden, perhaps?
Ah, yes. Yes, it is. So, right, let's go.
So we could probably just position absolute that, right?
Well, no. So let's do that for now. Just with opacity. Yeah, it's still just instantly disappearing, which is weird. Animation fade out, animation fill mode, both.
Try position absolutes. Maybe.
What are you trying to do?
Just the just to have the fade in and fade out work. flipping.
Fade out. Fade out. It's going to. No, that's correct. That's correct. We can do it a little more explicitly here. Content small and content big. Do animation name here. That's already working on moving things around, huh?
Yep. We'll just, yeah, testing out the waters.
Let's just take off position absolute here and let's see what's happening.
Oh, hey, that works.
Yeah, if we remove the position absolute, it's working. But that's, I mean, the container itself should be keeping it in the proper spot. Is it just not animating because it's I don't know, because it's changing the flow?
I don't know. What I'm more concerned about is my transition delay is not delaying. Is there a transform fill mode that I don't know about?
Oh, okay. There we go. We need width 100%. Do left 0 just to be explicit there. Okay. Ah, there we go. Got it. Okay. Yeah, so when you're position absoluting, sometimes you need to really be more explicit about the sizing of it. So width 100% there. All right. Hey, we're pretty close there. It's just the content itself.
There we go. Okay. That's weird. I'll talk about that later. But if you're doing a transition duration of 0 seconds, which essentially you're canceling the transition, I guess I could just do transition none.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all you.
All right. So transition duration 0 seconds won't cancel the transition. It'll just make it 0 seconds. So the transition delay still applies to the 0 second transition, which is confusing. So if I do transition none,
yeah,
I think that'll do what I want. There we go.
Yeah.
And right now I'm only animating the Y position. We'll talk about the scaling later. But
yeah, so let's do transition delay as 0.5 seconds because that's the fade out time. So we've got fade out and then move.
So this should probably be 0.5 seconds as well.
Yes.
Feels a bit snap. Well, no, it actually feels good.
Yep. Yeah.
Hey,
okay.
We are almost there.
Yeah. So all right, we've got two different states that we're toggling between with a click, and that's just happening by changing a data attribute, and we have the position of the modal changing smoothly, which is nice. Oh, you're already getting there. Yeah. And so now we just want to work on the actual like sizing change here. And so to kind of step back a little bit, explain what you did with the transform a little bit in the data flipping.
In the app.
Yeah.
All right. So like with regard to flip.
Yeah.
All right. So
we just haven't talked about that.
Yeah. So again, we did this in previous episodes. What we're doing with flip is we're calculating how far it's supposed to move from its original position, which we call the first position, to its resting position, which we call the last position. And that's represented by this dy variable that we get from JavaScript. Now, when we go to the last position, we have to invert it so it pretends to be at the first position. And so that's where we have this data flipping attribute, where it's a specific small moment in time where we're saying, hey, by the way, we're flipping. And so before it gets a chance to render to the screen, we're inverting it and being like, all right, pretend that you're in the first position. And then this data flipping attribute is going to be removed. And that's going to let CSS do its thing and allow a smooth transition from its inverted value to its resting value. And that's just by zeroing out the transform. Or, just to be explicit, we could just say transform none. And so now you could visualize that going from translate Y to none. And yeah.
Yeah, and this is a common technique. We dive into it a lot more elsewhere, so check those out.
Now I'm going to mess everything up.
But by using these request animation frames, we're ensuring that the browser is taking one frame to render everything as we want, and then we remove that data flipping attribute, and that triggers the actual transition. But on the data flipping attribute, we want transition none, so that it's instantly in that position in that frame. So that's what helps us get there. And all right, David is demonstrating what happens when we use that DH variable to scale it. So we're talking about transitioning the size here. So he's using scale Y to do that, but as you can see, that causes a lot of issues with the actual content. If this were actual text,
however, will we fix these issues?
Well, this is another technique that we've done before. So let's not scale Y here. We don't want that, and we actually don't want a background on the content either. We want to kind of separate this background animation from the content animation, because in the original here, you can see the background doesn't fade out, it doesn't fade in. There's nothing happening with that other than the size change. So let's go ahead and make that another element. So let's say up here, div class equals BG. And
yeah, we could also move it to a pseudo element.
Yeah, we could, but I like real
Some
elements.
developers are allergic to adding too many divs. They're like, just one more div? No. Okay, we don't have the budget for that.
BG. Yeah, there's cases for both, but in my experience, doing pseudo elements with heavy animation can slow things down, and that's not what we want to do. So instead of applying the background here, okay, David's got the radius. Let's say BG here is this.
And you could just use radius for the radius.
Yeah, great. We'll move that down here. Yep. All right, cool. All right, so we already have our BG element now. And we can say, we can do the same kind of transform or transition. I can actually just say transition inherit. And,
oh, cool.
We'll get the same kind of setup here, and then what we can do is on data flipping on the parent. So let's say data flipping. And on this element, we'll move this transform scale down here, transform scale Y, and you'll notice the 1 divided by DH, so we're actually kind of inverting the invert. Oh, man, that's awesome.
Almost awesome.
Almost awesome.
You see one nagging telltale issue?
Yeah, it's pretty obvious because we have that delay of the content fading out and this fading in. If you look closely at the border radius, I gotta zoom in there. That's showing it pretty clearly. The border radius itself is actually having some trouble there. So David's adding some fancy Fancy math.
Did that work? That did not
Well,
work.
so don't we need to transition the
Yes, we do.
border radius itself?
So
transition property, we'll do transform, comma, border radius.
There we go.
Yeah, there
wow.
we go. Jeez. Okay, so we're already there. That's already the impossible transition.
Yeah. These episodes are getting too short.
Well, we're just recycling all the techniques. No,
yeah,
this
that's
is
true. That's what happens.
well, this is a really good simplified example of something that we do a lot, and so I think it's important to show that because we haven't dove too deep into that before. Now there is, so let's see if we can do on the initial part app, and let's get the very initial render animating. Ever David finished. What are you?
No, I'm not doing anything.
Oh, I don't know why it's not re-rendering then.
There's an error.
There is. Where?
Where that happened? I think you made it disappear and then it reappeared. Cannot access get rect before initialization.
Oh, okay. So just move this down here.
And by the way, a lot of people say, "Oh, you could do these, these fat arrow functions just to const get rect." There is one big difference between those and your typical functions. This does not get hoisted. So, yeah, if we do a function get rect, then you'll see that it actually takes up the same amount of space. But yeah, now it's hoisted, so you could call it wherever you want. And so that's a big difference between const and function for all of you pedants out there.
It's interesting. Why on that initial one is it so weird?
On the initial one?
Yeah, maybe we just need to. Oh, okay. So we're doing.
Well, all right. So why are you flipping at the very beginning? Would be my question.
So one thing, looking at like right now with our. Oh, okay. You're just applying it directly there. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's re-render that. Yeah, we're almost there. Let's see. Got that. Okay.
Except, all right, so one thing, and I sort of anticipated this, the animation plays at the very beginning. I'm trying to see where those animations are.
line 67-ish.
67.
In the CSS, yeah.
Animation name, fade out. Okay, so let's do this. There. So basically, if they have a previous state, if they're not, the initial state, only then do you animate. And so that should work.
Oh, okay. You've already added that there. Never mind. All right.
Well, it works. It still does a fadey out thing, but we could apply the same treatment.
Oh, because we're actually doing it here. So what we would do is apply this in the click listener.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yep. And now we should get the content fade in. We should get the content fade in. There we go. Okay, I'm seeing the old content though.
On the initial state?
Yeah. Let's see. So, right. Okay. So
yeah, I see it fade in. It's pretty weird.
Yeah. So what we would do is, no. All right.
So wait, where does it fade in? Because we could just add it here. Pre state.
Yeah, but we still need like opacity 0 and opacity 1 here.
And now it's all gone.
Yeah, where did the background? Okay, so content is 0.
All right, maybe this. So we should probably just apply this data preview state thing to.
Well, oh right. So we just need actually that works. It just gives the animation fade in on the way in. That's not going to work because of our selector setup.
Right, I was gonna. Well,
So here, leave it as is, and just wait for a second.
Okay.
Wait for the refresh. Refresh.
It's not that we don't know how to fix this. There's just multiple ways.
There we go. So with this, the content just fades in.
All right, yeah,
which is perfectly fine.
That's fair,
in my opinion.
I could live with that.
The specifications say nothing about the initial render.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
However, right now I'm getting the contents immediately disappearing when you click.
You are.
Are you getting the same thing?
Oh yeah. So data preview state.
Is it my preview state stuff? It might be.
Okay. Well, no, it's my my explicitness or lack of explicitity.
Explicitity.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, we could just use transitions for all this. We don't need animations. We can just do transition opacity. Do transition property, opacity, transition timing function, linear, and then yeah, we'll change that to transition duration. Yeah, where possible, I like to use transition instead of animation, exactly for reasons like this.
Yeah, that's fair.
So we've got that. We've got this.
Right now it's like cross-fading into each other, which is really cool. But now it's doing the right thing.
Yeah, it just needed that delay in there. And hey, look, we've removed like 10 lines of code. So
nice.
Yeah.
So one reason I'm just slowly thinking about animations versus transitions is because whereas transitions are nice and they do all that dynamic stuff like you said, animations can be interruptible. We could have an animation play state paused. And so I'm thinking more about like right now, and let's cut this out in post, but clicking too fast sort of kills the interruptibility. So it's not smooth when you do that.
Yeah. So the interruptibility, yes, but there's also a lot of instances where a transition is actually better in that case without like a lot of work, because instead of like immediately jumping to like what the animation start state is, it transitions from where it's at. So if you're like halfway through the fade out and then you start fading back in, it's instead going from 0.5 back up to 1, rather than like having to pause an animation and like recalculate and do a bunch of stuff.
Gotcha.
That kind of fall in line with what you were saying. Like
maybe.
in the sizing case, like that's certainly tough. Because of the way that it's flipping, that's a bit of a problem. But one thing you can always do is set pointer events none for the duration of the transition, and then you've got no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is there anything else to show here?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
There's plenty of ways to make it more complex. There's plenty of ways to like add additional things in there, but we do that in plenty of other animations. Like the point here is just showing the very basic usage of flipping and these CSS variables to kind of move things around. and transition from one state to another. Is a scroll bar that briefly appears that I'm not sure why it briefly appears.
I think it might be because of the content. When we position absolute it, nothing a little overflow hidden can't fix.
Yeah, max height 100%.
My autocompletes aren't working for some reason, but
there we go.
Yeah, I killed the.
Oh, you did. You just overflow hidden.
So, yeah.
Yeah, sure. That'll do it. All right. So yeah, that's pretty much it here. What do you want to break down in this one?
Well, a lot of the things are things that we talked about, but I do want to talk about just the choreography to make this happen. So the transition delay kind of stuff.
Okay.
For sure.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't know that we've done a breakdown of kind of the layers and the toggling between the two. The way that we have the content position absolute, I think is worthwhile. Layering and toggling. So layering and toggling, and then the choreography transition delay. I mean, we could probably fit all of it into one video. Choreography, layering and toggling, choreography, transition delay. I think it's breaking it into just those two. So the layering and toggling, we're covering just kind of the layout change there, and the grid layering idea, and then for the second one, briefly touching on flip and the CSS variables there, and that transition delay kind of technique.
All right.
Let me do just a little bit of small cleanup here to just kind of group some of the CSS. So it's easier to follow for those concepts. Okay, so we're doing that delay. That's enough. All right. I think that's sufficient. Okay, and I'll hide the before for now, and we can reveal that when we get into the flip stuff if we want. Right. Okay. Everyone watching us live, thanks so much. We're happy to have you here with us. Hit us up in the chat if you have any questions. We'll be happy to answer those. But right now we're gonna just do like some really brief summaries. These are actually great to watch if you haven't seen the whole episode so far. And these will be split out into smaller videos that we'll share later as well. But stick with us, ask us questions if you have any, and we'll go from there. All right. I'm gonna give a little bit of a marker here for us, and then we'll jump back into to that new little overview bit I have at the end. All right, so hang with us. Hola, animigos, and welcome to Keyframers. I'm Stephen Shaw.
And I'm David Khourshid.
Let's take a quick look at a technique from Flip Between States, a nice animation that we've put together here.
Yeah.
All right. First, let's talk about the layering and toggling. So the kind of core of this animation is you've got two different states. You've got this shorter content, and you've got this bigger content. So content small and content big. We're handling the actual toggling between the two states with JavaScript here. There's a click listener. When you click it, it's eventually calling this toggle state, so that it's just setting a data attribute, this data state, and toggling it from big and small. But the actual like content bit, where the content is changing, is happening in the CSS. So a technique that we use quite a bit when we have different states that we need to move between in one container is this grid layering. And this is a technique using display grid, and then all of the children inside of it are grid area 1, 1. That just means everything is overlapping each other. So if we take off opacity 0, you can actually see both states existing simultaneously. They're just on top of each other. But for this particular animation, we want to transition the size in between the two. So whenever a piece of content is inactive, we have it set to position absolute, and that's basically taking it out of the flow, so it doesn't take up any space inside this container that you can kind of see with the background there. And then whenever a particular state is activated, we just switch that back over to position relative, so that this is now the one that's taking up space in the layout, and it's just fading in and out with this opacity 0 and opacity 1 and the transition that's set up there. So that's essentially all that it takes to toggle between two states. We have some more advanced stuff happening regarding like the sizing and everything like that, but if you had just a simple accordion where you wanted to just toggle some content open, like this is a perfectly great way to do that, with just a few lines of JavaScript and a few lines of CSS.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. I think that's good for that one. We'll edit that outro on after the next one.
Okay.
If you want to take the lead on this one.
Sure.
All right.
All right, so just like we've done in previous videos, we are going to be using the flip technique to smoothly animate between these small and big states. We have a flip function down here in the JavaScript where we're getting the first rectangle, and we're doing something which is changing the layout. In this case, we're changing between big and small and setting that to data states on the app. And so that's going to change the layout so that now if we're in big, we're showing the big content, and if we're in small, we're showing the small content. That's what is going to cause the app to grow or shrink. And when we're flipping, we're actually grabbing those values, such as the change in X, the change in Y, the change in width, and the change in height, and we're assigning those to CSS variables. All of this JavaScript that you see over here is not doing any animation. And this is going to be important for this challenge, because we're going to be using those values in the CSS and adding some transition delays in order to choreograph the display of the big and small content as they fade in and out with each other. And so we're doing that using a background element. Or actually, we're animating the layout by using a background element. And the reason we do that is because since the height is going to scale, we don't want to warp the children. So by only applying the scale animation to the background, we avoid having to invert scale the children.
That's right. And there's nothing in that BG element. It's just taking up the whole kind of container there.
Yeah.
And we've got the background and the border radius applied to it, so it's perfectly set up to just be the background, and we don't have to worry about anything else getting clipped or scaled.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the border radius, we have these values over here, which are inverting the border radius as well. And that's because if I remove this, just going to do that, then you're going to see all the weirdness going on with the animation if we don't do that. Especially for a big border radius, the effect is noticeable. So by taking the change in the width and the change in the heights into account and doing this it looks like a division thing. But what's happening here is we're telling the border radius how what its radius should be on the x-axis and what it should be on the y-axis. And so we're multiplying that by the change in width and heights to counteract the effects of warping there. So
yeah, that's some math we worked out in another episode that was really fun to get to. Thanks for figuring that out, David. And that prevents our border radius from getting too weird. And we're also using all those flip values that I've got showing here in a pseudo element up top. We're using the change in the y, the dy value, to smoothly animate that position so that it kind of slides into place. And an important aspect of flipping is applying transition none during that frame where everything is rendering in that inverted position. So that way it instantly snaps to that position and appears like it hasn't moved at all. And then that flipping attribute is removed, and so the transition then triggers from there.
Mm-hmm.
And we're choreographing these fairly simply. So there's a transition delay on the content itself. So the content that's going away fades out instantly, but the content that's coming in, it's delayed 1 second. And our app animation, we've got the transition delay of 0.5 seconds. So after the content fades out, the container then starts to animate. And then after that's finished, since it's only 0.5 seconds, the new content animates in. And that's just the choice of the original animation that we're working on. And that's a great way to handle it when you're moving between two states and don't want any kind of weirdness happening there.
Yeah. Challenge completed.
Nice work.
Too.
All right, so yeah, do the outro or start the outro for us there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can watch the full process of creating this animation with a deeper dive into each technique on the full live stream links below. And if you have any questions, please leave us a comment and we'll be happy to answer.
Yes. Our show is supported by our sponsors, CodePen at CodePen.io, CSS Tricks at CSS-Tricks.com, and viewers like you. You can pledge at patreon.com/keyframers and subscribe to our channel for more great content. We do have some links available below for all of that. But that's all we have for you right now. So thanks so much for watching. Until next time, adios, amigos.
Adios.